Alright, you dirty little perverts. Here is Captain America 243, which is in part another viewer request. They requested part 2 actually, but I'm not going to review part 2 without doing part 1 first. This one aligned with something I have wanted to talk about in a video for a while, and I talked about them a bit in yesterday's video, so it will seem harmonious and planned to expand on it here. This is written by S.H.I.E.L.D's McKenzie, and it comes only a few months before Roy Sternman and Jason Bourne take over Captain America. And much like on Daredevil, where S.H.I.E.L.D's McKenzie preceded Hank Miller, again, his efforts get overlooked here due to what came after him. This is a two-part story. I love Captain America. I enjoyed the hell out of this, but it does have the hallmarks of a filler story. All the weirder since S.H.I.E.L.D's McKenzie had been the book's regular writer for over a year by this point. We start off in the thick of it. Captain America is fighting a private militia who are trying to steal some S.H.I.E.L.D technology, the Master Matrix, which is used to create their robot duplicates. To people who recognise this as a very fill-in issue type of story, I would like to draw your attention to the fact this is actually building on something from one of S.H.I.E.L.D's McKenzie's first stories on the series. The one where Red Skull Man tried to take over S.H.I.E.L.D by imprinting himself onto all the robot duplicates. A story I really enjoy, by the way. Fun idea. This opening action scene is solid. It is a good introduction if this was your first ever issue of Captain America. A bit of a shame that it is the next issue of Captain America, which was actually the first one that the subscriber who requested it got instead. This would also be the ideal time to talk about S.H.I.E.L.D's McKenzie and his Captain America run. And to do that, I need to start a year before S.H.I.E.L.D's McKenzie was on the series. Following Jack Quimby's run in the 70s, Captain America's book became rudderless. Nobody seemed to want to write it. It got through half a dozen writers in the space of 10 issues. Making things worse was that each new writer brought on board started steering the character into a new direction that the next writer would quickly turn away from to take them instead into another new direction. It is a mess of a time with dropped subplots, awful resolutions, pointless retcons. This ended when S.H.I.E.L.D's McKenzie took over with issue 226, taking the writer reins from Steve Gerber. S.H.I.E.L.D's seemed to recognise the problem was the U-turns. And so rather than doing another 180 to get away from whatever Steve Gerber did, or whatever the people before Steve Gerber did, Sloane's McKenzie just pushed that stuff to the background to re-establish Captain America and have him embark on more straightforward adventures rather than a dense search for answers to a dozen questions about his origin or the secret conspiracy group targeting him. He did put most of that stuff to bed a few issues into his run when he, alongside Roy Sternman on Hulk, closed off all the gunk with the S.H.I.E.L.D. super agents and traitors and the evil consortium of power brokers. It is a better ending than such a shambolic setup deserved. There is the story with the Klan and the return of the 1950s Captain America, which is notable as it is the one that kills off Emily What's-Her-Face. Amusing to me, it kills her off panel. That is how unimportant she was to Captain America's mythology by that point. Sloane's McKenzie was also writing some very influential Daredevil comics with Hank Miller around the same time. He had actually taken over Daredevil a few months before Hank Miller came along. There are about 6 or 7 issues that are written by him, which are pretty decent. And then Hank Miller became artist, and together they did some classics, like the issue where Daredevil fights Hulk, or the one with Bullseye Man and Scarlett Johansson. Hank Miller, he took over writing the book solo, and that, much like on Captain America, meant that Sloane's McKenzie's contributions were overshadowed and overlooked because of what came after him. I did find out that Marvel got Sloane's McKenzie back to write a backup story in a Daredevil annual recently. By recently, I mean 7 years ago, because any comic after 2012 is recent to me. This made me smile. His introduction to his story. It just sounds like someone at Marvel made his day by actually remembering him. I remember you, Sloane's McKenzie. You were good on Daredevil and Captain America. Also, as petty as this is, please note that Tom Beavort's name is nowhere near the credits for this moment. I am sorry if this has been a long-winded introduction, but I have wanted to talk about this writer for a while. And I even chose to not tell my story about my first ever interaction with Kurt Busey, and how it concerned this run and a letter that he wrote in. There is Ron Spaceman, an advert for the toy and the comic book's first issue. Positive vibes, people. Positive vibes. Look at that kick there. Captain America is as nimble as a graceful gazelle. Professional dancing's loss is superheroine's gain. And even with all his Michael Flatley moves, the bad guys still get away with the Master Matrix. Proof positive that Riverdance is utterly useless. Captain America secretes himself under the bad guys' helicopter to follow them back to their base. And I have a suspicion completely unfounded by anything other than the story structure. I have a notion this may have been written to be an annual, and it was split into 2 issues. I have no proof whatsoever to back that up, beyond that it opens with an extended action scene, and it takes a bit longer to get to the plot than a regular issue would. We have a rich, hard man who cannot be arsed getting a tiny yellow car to drive around in. He is getting harder, and he is kept alive by machines and wires, and he wants to live forever like Oasis sang about. So he wants to use the S.H.I.E.L.D Master Matrix to create a new everlasting body for himself. Very simple, accessible idea for a bad guy. When he eventually gets his new body, he is called Adonis. He only ever appears in this story. He did, many decades later, receive a Andy book entry in the Captain America themed Andy book. One of my favourites of those modernised Andy books. He got a half-page entry, and that was something I loved about those Andy books. They could gan back and give a profile to a character like Adonis, who never before had a profile. I am not showing the actual profile here for a reason. I quite like Adonis, this bad guy here, and I instantly recognised a possible cause for why I might be inclined to like him. So I checked last night, and it is not the case that Adonis was pictured or even mentioned in Captain America the Legend. Turns out I just have a fondness for Adonis on his own merit, and I cannot much explain that. I think it is a decent core idea there. Something that could be a bit stock in other circumstances, but they have tied it to a corner of Marvel mythology that not only makes sense, but it definitely makes it more exciting than if he was just trying to make a generic robot body for himself, rather than one of the S.H.I.E.L.D ones. This issue is a lot of setup to get to the new body. Something goes wrong, as you would expect. And then that drunkard Iron Man shows up to try and fix things with fruit pies. And it just makes things worse. And here is Adonis in his supposed perfect body. I didn't show the Andy book profile because it would spoil this splash page. So quickly, I'll show that half-page entry now, and you can pause and read it if you want. Here is an advert with Batrock that you've got to turn sideways to read, which I love doing. I honestly recommend this 2-parter. It will not change your life, but it might change your opinion on the state of Captain America just before Roy Sternman and Jason Byrne took over. Slurms McKenzie deserves a lot of credit for course-correcting Captain America, and he never really got it. All he ever got was a nasty letter sent in by Kurt Busey saying he was writing the all-time worst Captain America stories. This is far from the all-time worst Captain America story. Even were I to limit it to just Captain America stories that had came out by this point, it is far from the worst. Maybe it isn't the best one ever, but I had no qualms about rereading it, and I enjoyed reading it. And at several points I thought to myself, God, I really love Captain America. I'd give it 7 thumbs up.